Hi everybody, this is Kathy Eckhart welcoming you to my YouTube channel. And tonight I wanted to tell another bedtime story. So this evening I thought I would tell a new version of an old story that is in the Grimm's fairy tales, and that's the story of Rapunzel. So let me tell that story in this new version. Once upon a time there was a young man who was walking through a forest. He came to a particularly thick part of the forest. It was very dense and very dark, and in the middle of this thicket there was a tower. So the young man was very curious about this, and he went up to the tower to examine it. He walked around the tower to see if anybody was there, and high up, very, very high up, in the side of the tower, almost all the way to the top of it, was a window. So the young man looked up to see this window, and at first there was nobody in the window, but the longer he waited and the more carefully he looked, he noticed that there was a very, very attractive, raven-haired girl standing in the window looking out over the landscape, and she was so beautiful and she seemed a little sad, but the young man was immediately drawn to her because she was so lovely, and he was particularly attracted by her raven black hair. So the young woman looked down, the girl looked down and noticed the young man at the base of the tower, and very quickly there was an attraction between them. The problem was that a witch had locked the young woman into the tower so that she could not escape, and unfortunately the young man could not find any way of reaching her. Now, in the old version of this story, there were two things that were different, at least two things. One was that the young woman had blonde hair, but more importantly, she had very, very long hair in the original version of this story that she could let down to the young man so that he could climb up and reach her, and they could be with one another. But in my version of the story, the young woman high up in the tower had very short raven hair, not unlike the hair that I have right now, and so there was no way for the young man to reach her, and it really wasn't very feasible for her to grow her hair or let her hair grow out, because it would take too long, and by the time that her hair managed to grow, either the witch would come back, or the young man would become discouraged, or maybe they both would become very depressed, and so there would be no way for her to manage her escape by growing her hair. So, what happened? Well, eventually the young man, who very much wanted to be with this beautiful girl, gave up. He didn't know how to reach her, and there was something about her that really appealed to him that he didn't understand at the time. But because there was no way for him to reach her, he finally decided to leave the tower in the middle of the forest and go on with his life. So he did, and he went to a town, actually a city, and began to go to school, and maybe he got a job, and did various things that we all associate with growing up and moving on and trying to have a mature life. But no matter what he did, he continued to think about the beautiful raven-haired girl in the tower. He couldn't get her out of his mind, and the older he became, the more he realized that he really didn't want to have a romantic relationship with her, and nevertheless there was something about her that was very mysterious and very intriguing. It was almost like a part of himself that he didn't fully understand. But several years went by, and he couldn't really make any sense out of that. But then one day in the city, he went into a store. It was a used clothing store, and it had a lot of clothes from past eras, and costume jewelry, and wigs, and all other kinds of things. And so the young man began to look around in the store and to investigate or check out the merchandise, and for some reason he was thinking all the while of this beautiful girl that he had seen, this girl with raven hair that he had seen high up in the tower. So he went into the store that had all different kinds of rooms and hallways and crannies. There were a lot of things in the store to explore. And at one point, he went into a very deep recess in the store where there were wigs. And he noticed that there was a wig in this part of the store that was the same shade of color. That is, it was a raven-colored wig, a very dark, very black wig. It was the same shade of color that the beautiful girl had had in the castle. And all of a sudden, it became clear to the young man what he needed to do. And so he bought the wig, and he bought pantyhose, and he bought a dress, and he bought a top and a purse, and all different kinds of feminine, female clothing, makeup. And he went home and began to experiment with wearing these things. And in particular, when he put on the raven-colored wig, the raven black hair, that was the same shade as that of the beautiful girl in the castle, all of a sudden he realized something, and that was that he had finally reached her, that she was he, that she was a part of who he was, so that when he put on the wig and the clothes and began to think of himself as a beautiful girl, he realized that without climbing the side of the tower, without finding a ladder, or without the girl in the tower growing her hair out, he was able to reach her because she, in some mysterious way, was a part of who he was. And so this was a great revelation to him. And it made sense out of his life. So that's the story that I wanted to tell tonight. And as the young man was experimenting with different clothing, he would try different things. And so, for example, he would try a skirt like this, or this kind of a top, and he would also experiment with different kinds of pantyhose, which is what I'm doing tonight. And so this would make him very happy. And he realized that this was who he was, and that this was who he was going to be, and that's the end of the story. So this is Katja Eckhart, and I thank you for listening to my new version of an old story. I hope that everybody will have a good night, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye-bye.